So next up, we'll have, I'm going to try not to butcher your name, Ajinkya Marudwar. I hope that's right.
Yes. Yeah, Ajinkya Marudwar.
Okay, Ajinkya Marudwar. Ajinkya, I think you jumped in last moments to prepare a presentation. So I'm really interested, and it's about how you can automate your documentation, and that's something that's very close to a lot of people that are trying to improve the flow of information between the developers and the people that are going to be consuming APIs. So very curious to hear your talk, and with this, please take it away.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the brief introduction, and let me start with the presentation. So I would be talking. So I will give you a basic introduction. I'm working. Recently joined Previous Era as a lead technical writer. Previously, I used for GS Lab, and right now I would be presenting you the project that I've worked on and the implementation that I've done from my previous company, not from Previous Era. So let's go through the deck. So what points we will be covering today is like the basic API documentation process that or everyone follows. Then how we are going to automate our API documentation and what is the setup requirement to do that. Then why we are automating it, how it is done, the comparison of both the outputs, like the output that we get from a manual building of API using an authoring tool, and the output that we are getting using the automation console that I am using to generate. And then lastly, we could end with the Q&A session. So here are two comparisons why developing a manual API documentation and automated API documentation. I both the working is fine unless like the manual API documentation is good when the project is on your initial state. It's a very small product line that it won't be having multiple changes. There are many changes into API while documenting it, or in the release production cycle, there won't be any changes. So it is good for small products with minimum updates. And the concept of developing a manual API documentation is like API knowledge is must. Like anyone should have, not only beginner, they should have knowledge to test it, implement it, and how to fetch the information from API. So that is important to have it. A new person will find a bit difficult to start with documenting it manually. Then testing and verification is required because we are going to do it manually. We should get it verified and tested in hand beforehand publishing it. So, and it is prone to human error. Like we can tend to copy paste errors. Like generally we could, what we do, we get the codes and stuff from the get or any design documents or specification test plans that we get from the developer or QAs, and then we add that part into our documentation. But without verifying it, it's it shouldn't be proceed further. Then maintenance is difficult. So because if the document grows bigger, there would be multiple endpoints and there would be multiple things that need to be taken care of. And in long run, like a person could not keep up with all the changes, because a major release could have multiple changes at multiple levels of API, and all the things need to be documented. And there are high chances that it could get skipped. So these are the points for manual API documentation. And why I moved for automated API documentation was as it is, it's easy to maintain. It's very accurate and consistent like output, because we are taking all the information from our code itself. Just the information that we are creating were the files that we have documented about the features and the input information. It's less prone to error because we, as I said, we are taking it from the code itself, the build, the final build that we are releasing for the end customer. So the maintenance is easy as well. And I will, like, you will, as you will go further, you will see how easy it is to set up your machine and start generating the API documentation. Even a beginner level who doesn't have much knowledge about API, just a basic knowledge of half an hour session on YouTube, whatever it's available, and they can learn that part about how an API works. That's enough to start generating the API documentation using the automation console that I would be showing you. The only con is like the system setup requires a bit time, and but if you have your system ready, or even we can clone, right, these days, like we can clone the system configurations and everything, and that's done. Like everyone can start using the configuration settings. uh, while implementing, the only thing like to troubleshoot it, everything is settled, but in case there is a different additional need, or there is something needs to be changed on the go, the person should have knowledge of, or understand the code a bit. It's not that difficult. As you will go further, you'll see the code is not that difficult, but just a bit understanding will be helpful. So why we automated our API docs? So previously we used to manually create it in Metacat Flare and FreeMaker, but then the document was growing and growing. Then we thought like it should be automated, because we have multiple releases, and each so minor release could go up to 40 to 50 features, and for a major release it could last up to 150 features. And the our API documentation was divided into 29 modules, and right now it has 13,000 plus endpoints. And generation because this is like the optimum time that I have mentioned, 120 minutes. So it's like 2 hours it takes completely to generate it end to end. This was not in the initial date when we first initially implemented it, but after that we started upgrading our code and everything, and we were at the point like in 2 hours the whole document is getting generated. And now there was no more dependency on a writer, even a fresher or an intern, whoever joins the team, he could start working on the API documentation. Like whenever the release comes across, we could assign the ticket, Jira ticket to him or her, and they could just go to the machine, download everything, and start generating the documentation. So one more important point was the complete guide was getting updated on the go. We don't have to do, we don't even need to think about like if anything was missing or so, because uh, we fetch everything from the build, the final release build, and we push it to add it to our source folder. So, and the files that we were generating was in HTML and PDF. Most of the people would say, why a 13,000 pages document for a PDF? But it was a client requirement, so we'd have to do it. But we had done like the settings, and everything was so super fine. Like even if you do a search on a PDF, the system won't freeze, or the reader won't hang up on you. So that was efficiency was there, and it has an efficient search engine. We used Sphinx, and it has its indexing function, and the searching is quite efficient, and that's why it was like never a problem to that we are not getting required information. So how we would be doing an automated API documentation setup? So setup is pretty easy. It's not that difficult. It requires a very minimum configuration, like 2 GB RAM ROM, and then it can be done on any machine. Like you can have a Linux, Windows, Mac, on which you need to install Python, latest version, Sphinx, latex, and text editor. So text editor was basically to generate to write your RST files and other files, config and Python codes and everything. Latex files was only required when you need to generate a PDF output. If you are not generating a PDF output, latex software installation is not required in that case. So our source folder was pretty decent. Like we call it a raw folder, and it was fixed for entire time. So what we developed an RST files for each module, and plus its individual endpoints. We have developed everything. We have written it into RST format, and that was getting fetched while generating the API into the source file. So there was schema files, artifact files, CSS, config.py, index. So config was in Python, written in Python, then index, and then we had our basic Python scripts to execute the code and generate the output. So this is a basic example of the RST file that we have. So it will be shown on the HTML. This is our QA automation console machine. All the companies have their QA automation console. So what they need to just do execute an SDK test. We call it regression test, and through regression test we need to get examples. We need to do this setup, and examples are like the code and everything we could get fetch from that machine. And then we have, okay, so this is the thing. The other thing is like, once everything is done, you are settled down, you have your schema files downloaded from the build, you have your artifacts, like we called it examples, downloaded from your from the QA console and all. So that everything is done. We just need to copy everything into our source folder, like the schema. Copy the schema files into schema folder. Copy your artifacts files, like example files, into your example folder, and then it's done. Like we just need to execute these 3 scripts. And once this script is, the first script will take around 5 to 10 minutes. The second would take the same time, and the third takes around max around 130 to 140 minutes. And your documentation is ready in HTML format. Just we need to execute one more step to generate into a PDF format. PDF would take around 30 to 45 minutes to generate a 13,000 page document. It is, I would say, like, it's very less time. Before, when we started on initial days, it used to take around 7 hours to generate that same document. So okay, so once that is generated, I just wanted to show you an example of how we used to document it manually. This is using an Metacat Flare tool. We generated it, like we document API for one of our product manually, and this is the output for that. This is an output, a Sphinx output. This is a basic TOC for that, how we used to get the document output. Everything is generated through our console using Sphinx only. It has only one theme used. This is an endpoint example of like how it is. So the other option that we got over here was like the instant schema. We can, any user who wants to see the schema, they can download it immediately from here itself. And there was a the clickable button as well, example button, from where they want to see the example, the payload information and all. They could just click on the example, they could copy the payload information, edit according to their need, and then again click on it, that it will close up. So it was that efficient. Plus, okay, so this is a basic process. I have closed, I came end of the slide deck. So this was a basic process that we used to follow for generating API documentation. And this really, I would say, like, this really helped us a lot to deliver our end-to-end product lines, multiple releases. I would say, like, we have had back-to-back releases for multiple product lines. Like, there could be like 2 minor releases, 1 major release for 1 product line. We had like 3 product lines, and there was back-to-back things going on. So maintaining those documents manually was not possible. So this is it.
Thank you, Ajinkya. So docs as code and like automated deployment workflows, that's the beating heart of the tech writer community. How many, like you said, you were using Metacat Flare. Was that because you were you have like how many people do you have in the team that is working on this documentation?
So we had around 12 team members.
12 team members, yeah. And like, that's just the tech writers, or that's also people that are building the tooling for?
No, only tech writers. So 12 team tech writers.
So and were they like, if you say Metacat Flare, I would imagine that there are people that were doing tech writing before, that they didn't come from the API scene directly.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So many tech writers don't have API background with them. They have a knowledge about XML, HTML, and other stuff, but they don't mostly work on API, because many companies don't have that opportunity to work with. So this was an ease of thing. Like, whenever someone wants to go on leave or there was no dependency, it just removed all the dependency on a tech writer, and it really helped a lot.
So like, and that what did it also help with getting your existing tech writer team to get used to like documenting APIs?
Sorry,
did it also help to like bridge the gap? Because this is what I often see in teams, is that there might be existing tech writers, but they're not focused on APIs. So this is new, and it's kind of scary often. And then there might be some developers that are interested in docs and that might be doing it from that end. But like bridging that gap between these communities is not always that easy. And it's doing automated documentation this way, did that help with bridging that gap?
Yes, a lot actually, because once we have an API document automated, the person who is writing it or who is generating it, they get a self-confidence. And even because this stuff is readily available for a developer, like he has just like finalized a build and he wants to check if everything is available in API. If he raises a documentation ticket, it will take longer time to to give him an output and he would verify. But because of this automation thing, everything was done in same day itself. And plus, because of this interaction between technical writer and developers and all, the transition was very smooth and everyone was like, what would I say, like getting familiar with this stuff was very easy and convenient. And even because of this, the testing became easy for our team.
Yeah. And how do you manage the coordination between your developers and your tech writers? Like how do you structure that? Do you have a dedicated formula for that, or like do the API teams, do they ask for help from the tech writers, or is it the other way around, like more of a pull model that's going on?
So normally we have a release plan. So when we are planning for releases and everything, so once that is so we are continuously interacting with developers and we have an idea, pretty good idea, like on what stage the development is going on and when it would be finalized. Because we generally have two sorts of releases. That is, one is internal release, that the software plus the documentation undergoes a review cycle internally within our stakeholders, support team, and everyone, and then it goes for out the wider audience, like the customers and all. So when there is an internal release, that's there is a code freeze, and then we would get a green signal to start generating it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm always fascinated with how does it actually work? Like, how do you get collaboration between your tech writers and your developers, and how do they keep up to date? Because automation helps to like streamline the publishing part, but also the writing part, and how much disconnect do you have between the team that has implemented a new version of your API, or that has further developed something new, and then until it's actually written. Do you have any advice on that piece for people in the audience?
Sure. So what we did to achieve this is, like, we got involved into the design documentation phase. It's like when the feature is getting designed, or when there is a customer requirement come across. So we are involved in that meetings as well, from the initial days, like how the feature is getting developed. Even during the test plan is getting created, we are involved in that. And during the demo phase, there are like iterations going on within the QA and developer, everything in between, in the whole cycle we are involved. That's why, like, the interaction is very easy, and anyone I would suggest, like, all the tech writers should get involved into the business planning, plus like whatever the release plan a company is developing, plus they should get involved and throw their ideas during the designing phase itself, like, if there are limitations, but whatever come across. So how because getting involved in that phase itself, tech writer could get a better picture about the feature or the product that we are delivering to end customer, and the documentation will improve 100% because of that.
Okay, thank you. We still have a few minutes, but maybe we can close down a little bit earlier. But I wanted to ask I also for the audience. I have a problem with Hopin that is not loading for me. It might be my internet provider, because I've heard that certain parts of the internet were not accessible for some other people in Belgium yesterday. So it might be just me, but I'll try to restart after this during the break. But before, so that's why if there's anybody asking questions, Matteo, I'm counting on you to ping them back over in StreamYard. That's it. Okay. What I'm maybe curious about still is, so we've had several talks about complexity and about how to deal with the complexity of organizations, of communities, complexity of code. There were some talks. How do you manage the complexity of the audience that you're trying to address, and the complexity of the organization that you need to interface with? Do you have, like, did automation help with some parts of that also?
So automation, I wouldn't say automation helped. I would, like I said, there was a feature to add schema at the downloadable file, and then there was a button for examples that helped us to concise the information that is visible to an audience, and searchability and readability score increased because of that. But it was pretty good. Like, if you say automation or without automation, when we are using a proper authoring tool with everything set, the customer interaction is pretty good with the documentation, if it's rightly interfaced.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for coming on board. Thank you for joining in and doing a talk on the documentation track, and for sharing what you've learned with the people in the audience. Thank you, Ajinkya.
Thank you, Krisha.